Welcome to Staring into the Abyss. I'm your host, Richard Gerlach. With me, as always, is Marco Patrick Hicks.
Hello.
Film I Missed.
Hey.
And the author of Peel Back and See, Mike Thorne.
Hey, thanks again for having me on, guys. It was so much fun talking with you last time. I can't wait to chat again. And last time, Villamy was not here, so
yes,
this will be can't wait. And nice to meet you officially. We've been online friends for a while, but never spoken.
I know, it's always like that. And then people hear my voice and they're like, "Wait, what? Why is a kid
Is that
here?"
American?
Yeah, or more like, "Why is a kid here?"
It's our 12-year-old host. She's here to give us the youth perspective.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing. We need that.
What those Zoomers are talking about right now.
Youth
So-
thinking.
I will say, after our last episode, I did end up using the Black Cat in one of my lessons
Fuck
for
yeah.
October. And it went pretty well. Although the students liked Cask of Amontillado the best of the Poe stories I did.
Interesting. Were they put off by the animal mutilation in the Black Cat, or did they love it?
No, they loved it, but they liked the whole like tricking the guy into burying him in the wall of Amontillado a bit better. Because it's just like the slow building dread of just like, how is he going to get his revenge? Oh, that's how he's going to get his revenge.
Yeah. Oh, that would be a good one to teach. I've never taught Cask, but maybe I'm sure I'll do that eventually. That would be lots of fun.
If you do a foreshadowing lesson, Cask is really good for that.
Okay, cool. Cool.
Yeah, I digress. I'm a teacher in my day job, so I do a lot of this.
You guys ready for some Mike Flanagan, Edgar Allan Poe, Netflix stuff?
Fuck yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
What is he adapting again? Which one?
The Fall of the House of Usher.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I tend to like his stuff. I'd be curious. I feel like his sensibility is a little odd for Poe. Flanagan's very warm and almost sentimental, often in a good way, but I'll be curious to see how he approaches Poe. I mean, Oculus, I guess, has some pretty nasty, mean moments in the best way, so that's cool.
I mean, Absentia had some pretty messed up parts too.
True, but it still had like this real warmth to it, like a real he's very empathetic, whereas I think Poe is less empathetic to the human race in general. So it's an odd pairing, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
We'll get his Christopher Pike adaptation before the Poe one, so
there you go. He's going to hit it all. That's great.
Yeah. Honestly, Netflix is just printing money for him now at this point. Like, that's every show he's done for Netflix has been such a big hit. He's just like, he's their cash boy now.
Yeah.
Well, better him than a lot of others, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's true.
We'll see. Maybe, I don't know, Squid Game might rock that boat a little bit after debuting much stronger than Midnight Mass, unfortunately.
Have you guys been getting like in the news? Like, are people complaining a lot about Squid Game? Like, and when I'm talking about like, you know, the neighbors or, you know, parents and stuff.
I am so far behind on news. I haven't heard any complaints or really seen anything online, but I am probably way outside that echo chamber, so I don't know.
The only complaints I've heard, and I try to keep politics out of the show, but the only complaints I've heard have been from conservative talking heads saying how the show is anti-capitalistic, which it is, and is promoting communism, which it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, but conservative commentators think everything is promoting capitalism.
You mean promoting communism,
Promoting
right?
communism, yeah.
Okay, good.
I'm still working through my first cup of coffee here, man.
I just, one of my Italian friends told me that there's a petition going on, I don't know where in Italy, to ban Squid Game, because apparently there were two Italian kids who were actually doing the Squid Game.
Wow, you mean they built a giant stuffed animal with machine guns in it?
Not really, but they did the last game, the Squid Game, where
that's a real like game. Well, I guess it's based on a real game that kids play in Korea.
Yeah. But like it got to the point that I think it was like the older brother, he was like really, really hitting his little sister a bit too hard.
It's just part of the game, man. Got to do whatever you can to prevent that person from stepping on the circle.
I know. Just don't let your kids watch the show.
Yeah, that seems like a show that is not intended for children.
It's not.
Oh, it's not.
And like my kids have never seen it and will not see it for a very long time.
Yep.
And they hit each other. I don't blame Squid Game for that. I think it's because they're 3 and 5 and that's how they play.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a person on my Facebook. I was just checking now. They deleted the post, but they made a post like the other day. That was I had a screenshot. It was one of the worst hot takes I've seen in a while. He was watching Squid Game, and he said, "Is it just me, or is Squid Game literally teaching people how to do another Holocaust?"
What?
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, "What? I don't think that means what you think it means."
No.
Yeah, he said, finally finished Squid Game. It's basically a video blueprint for executing a modern-day Holocaust. I can't believe Netflix would ever publish something like this. Wow.
I haven't seen Squid Game, so this whole conversation is very confusing to me. But and I don't really know anything about it. I'm like lately doing my best to avoid online media discourse in general, which makes me feel a lot less annoyed. But and that's why, because that sort of point of view is just like the most insane way to look at art. Yeah. It's just like what reality are you living in? You think art can cause the fucking Holocaust? Are you kidding me? Jesus Christ.
I actually heard one, I think there was this one woman or one artist who wrote a song in which she was comparing her toxic relationship with her husband to Hiroshima.
Wow.
That's a yikes.
Yep. Yep. So, yeah, this is not uncommon, apparently.
Yikes to Reno there.
I mean, that whole petition thing, my viewpoint is just like, maybe don't let the TV babysit your kids. Take an active role and do some fucking parenting. Find out what they're watching. Watch with them. Monitor what they're doing. Don't let them have access to the adult Netflix when you can put up a kids account for them.
And you can also set up an account that like can limit what movie ratings and TV show ratings they can watch. So you can have a regular Netflix account for your kids, and you can say no higher than rated PG-13 movies, no higher than rated TV-14 TV shows. Like you can do that. Like take the time out of it.
It's basically just, lazy parents blaming their lazy parenting on everything but themselves.
Yeah. It's like, no. Having to set up all these accounts and make a password, that's too much work for me. I don't want to take an active role in parenting when I can just ask you to ban stuff left and right. You need to accommodate me. I shouldn't have to accommodate my children. Like, what the fuck are you thinking?
Well, before I give us one last internet hot take to get mad about.
My hot take really quick is that if you rely on the internet petitions to ban shit instead of doing your parenting work, maybe don't have children. That's my hot take. If you're going to be this much of a lazy fucktard of a parent, then don't have children.
I will say both to Mike and Mike, Squid Game is a really good show. The hype is blowing it up a bit more than like it should. If you can put the hype aside, it's a pretty good thriller with some really good twists and some pretty good violence to satisfy the violence lover inside you guys.
And a lot of emotional things.
Yeah, episode 6 might make you either cry or go for the whiskey. One of those two.
It is on my wish list to watch well after the children are in bed and sleeping.
But one more. Did you hear about the Halloween Kills petition?
Yeah, they don't want to have the fireman opening.
Yeah, they want to remove the fireman getting killed from the opening of Halloween Kills.
If only there were some real life problems these people could focus their energies on.
God. Yeah, yeah. It's like I can't.
Thank God nothing else is happening in the world that we could have some kind of a positive impact on.
Yeah,
that we have to focus solely on fictional entertainment.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just censor art. Let's police art. That seems like the best way of moving through the world.
Nothing bad ever happens when you censor everything.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Oh man, it's disturbing. I can't. What is the reasoning behind that? Because they think depiction equals endorsement. Like,
I guess there's been times where someone has started a fire. This is what they say. I can't verify if this being true or not, but this is what they say. People have started fires to supposedly lure a fireman to a location and then commit said murder of fireman. I tried to Google research about this happening, and I haven't found anything to reinforce that theory, if you want to call it a theory. But that's what they're saying, is that Halloween Kills is like perpetuating the starting a fire to call a fireman over to put out a fire and then kill that fireman.
But even if that is a thing that happens, that is reality, and Halloween Kills is a movie. So if Halloween Kills chooses to depict something that occurs in reality, it has the right to do that as a work of art. It's like, can we agree on like ground zero of what art is? Like, it's not real. Jesus. Holy shit.
Two things on that. From what I understand, Halloween Kills opens like literally right on the ending of the 2018 Halloween, in which there was an actual fire in progress that required the firemen to be deployed.
Yes.
So what are we supposed to take away from this? Like, firemen should not respond to fires because of Halloween Kills? Like,
yes, let it burn down and just build things anew.
It's better to be safe. We have to keep the firemen safe so they can no longer fight fires.
I think what we should do is eliminate all violence and actually all conflict from art altogether, because that will then eliminate conflict and art from the real world.
Yeah,
I think that's the solution, right?
I mean, I always look at how violent the Wild West was because of all the video games they were playing all the time.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know.
I mean, these cowboys sitting around the ranch playing Grand Theft Auto. Look at what happened. The other question I had really quick, what's your take on Mike Myers being homophobic because he killed a gay couple along with everyone else?
Oh, that's my take on that is people like to look for hot takes on Twitter and use them to make clickbait news articles.
Yeah.
That's my take on that.
My favorite was a meme that was like, actually, in a weird way, Michael Myers would be homophobic if he didn't kill the gay couple like he did everyone else.
He wouldn't touch them.
Right.
Michael Myers says gay rights.
Yes. He's an equal opportunity murderer. I don't know.
He's inclusive to everyone.
That's right. Everybody. Black, white, straight, gay, it doesn't matter.
Children, fuck it. Dogs, cats, I mean, he'll do everything.
Everyone is a victim. I think that's the most empowering message we can find.
For Mike Myers, yeah.
Goddamn communists.
Goddamn socialists.
Well, I don't have much to report on from my last week of media consumption. I'm about halfway through Revelation Space.
Yes.
And I still love it. It is one of the best sci-fi books I've ever read.
Alastair Reynolds is the author.
Yeah, Alastair Reynolds, he's like fucking cold as fuck. Like,
yeah.
All his humans characters are just the worst fucking people in the world. And like, it's so good though.
It is. I am reading his latest release currently, Inhibitor Phase, and I'm about almost halfway through that. And it picks up at the tail end. You're starting at the beginning of the Inhibitor cycle stories. This is the fourth book in that series, and it picks up. I don't know if it picks up exactly right after the end of that trilogy, but it's very much set in that world. It might be between books 2 and 3, or it might be set after book 3, but they haven't gotten into all of the shit that happens in book 3.
I'm excited to continue reading this one because it's really good.
Yeah,
and
this is as well.
I have my tickets to see Dune later today.
You're in for a treat.
So that's going to be fun. But Besides some TV I've been rewatching, which I can give a shout out to later, that's kind of what I've been up to this week. What about you, Mike?
Well, I watched Dune from the comfort of my own home. I enjoyed a cinematic experience in my living room, and I dug the hell out of that movie. I think you're going to really, really have a good time with it. It is, of course, only half of the story, as people probably already know by now. It is part one of a prospective two-part series. At the time of recording this, Dune just came out, and we are impatiently waiting for Warner Brothers to announce part two. Hopefully that'll be coming up soon. It's a great film. I liked it a hell of a lot. My only complaint is that I wanted a bit more time with some particular characters to get to know them or hate them more. And a lot of it feels like it is very much prologue for part two. There's a lot that is set up. There's a lot that's explored, and it is really only half the story that we're getting here. But it's a very good half. And I am very now impatiently waiting for part two to come out. One other thing, last week I had mentioned that I was at that time in progress with Hunter Shea's Faithless. I have finished that. The first 2/3, like I said last week, were fantastic. The final third was absolutely probably one of the worst things I've read in a long, long time. Last week I had recommended this book. This week I am retracting it based off of how bad and nonsensical that last third turned out to be. It's an ending that I found was not at all keeping in the spirit of the book that came before. And it feels like somebody else wrote it for an entirely different book. And it takes a sharp left turn into like Nicolas Cage video on demand kind of nonsense. And it's just a really, really weird, nonsensical, and just downright goofy ending for everything that came before. So I guess it's one of the dangers of us talking about stuff we are in progress with. Ultimately, Faithless was not very good. 2/3 of it were really good, but then the ending of it is just so bad that I can't recommend it. I have to retract last week's recommendation. Villame, how about you? Hopefully you've got some better stuff going on.
Well, I had my wisdom tooth extracted on Wednesday.
Well, that is better than how Faithless ended. That's true.
Good to know, because afterwards I was not feeling good, y'all.
How are you now?
It still hurts. I can't open my mouth that much. I can't eat a lot of the food that I enjoy, which is horrible because TikTok is definitely listening and he's showing me all of these food videos. Being so cruel.
I got your algorithm.
Yeah, fuck that algorithm. But I decided to finish watching You. The third season of You. It's on Netflix, and I was really excited because I thought it would be based off the third book, You Love Me, by Caroline Kepnes.
It's not.
It's not. It goes in a completely... Yeah, I mean, the third book is really, really good. I really like it. But the third season goes like in a completely different direction. Not to say that it's bad. I mean, I binge-watched it the entire time until I... was too cocked up on painkillers that it knocked me down. But I finished but it wasn't that long. I think it was only 7 episodes. So
how many do they normally do?
I feel like they usually did like 12.
Oh wow, okay.
Like the usual amount of Netflix, episodes in a series.
Season 1 was actually a Lifetime show.
It was?
That Netflix got the rights to.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And then Lifetime canceled it.
Yeah.
And Netflix started, and Lifetime still had co-production when season 2 came out. And then when season 3 happened, that's when it switched fully over to Netflix.
Oh, okay. It says when you start watching it, it says it is based on Hidden Bodies on book 2. But I don't remember any of that stuff from Hidden Bodies, so it was weird. I think the only things that they kind of based it off was like, oh yeah, remember Love? Yeah, she and Joe, they had a child, and that's about it. And we'll just take you in a whole different direction. enjoy.
Well, maybe season 3 will be based off of book 4.
Well, I don't know.
Well, they just announced they're doing season 4.
Yeah, they said Joe will definitely return, and I'm like, okay, yeah, well, people seem to love Joe, so I don't understand. I don't see why. But it was fun. I really liked it. If you like the other 2 seasons, you're gonna like this one. I mean, the guy who plays Joe, he's phenomenal. He's so funny, even though he's not intending to be funny. It's just all the red flags and everything. I just kind of broomed it into like, you're hilarious. You're so deluded, but okay. And we went to see, actually yesterday, Venom, Let There Be Carnage. And the second, it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny flick. Venom is really funny. I actually really like how they've made Venom. I like the symbiote. I really like how he made him. He's super funny. I mean, at one point they kind of get a divorce, and they go their separate ways, which is so funny. And Venom is trying to, live his life like he wants to, and he goes crashes into a masquerade. And everyone's like, "Oh, I love your costume, man." And he's like, "Yeah, I made it myself." And then he just crashes into the stage and grabs the mic and just says, "Everyone should love being themselves. Everyone should be free doing what they want." And you're like, "You eat people. You should do that."
Legalize cannibalism.
He actually almost said that.
I guess that would have been too on the nose.
Yes, but it was really funny how it made it. And I mean, there were a lot of action shots, but at the same time, I felt like nothing was happening at the same time. It's like there was oh, there's this happening, and then woo, crashes, and then this happening, and woo, crashes, and you're like, okay, story-wise, what's happening?
That's kind of a bad sensation to have, since this movie's only 90 minutes long.
I know. And we, when the intermission came, I think an hour had passed, and I was like, "Wait, what? There's 30 minutes left? What?
Wait, you guys have intermissions? You have intermissions over in Iceland?
Yeah, we do.
For short movies, even?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that actually that blows my mind right now. I'm not even joking.
Well, you gotta have bathroom breaks and eat more popcorn and buy more stuff.
Yeah, no, we don't do that here.
They just play the movie straight, and if you have to go to the bathroom, you go to the bathroom, and you're missing a part.
Yeah,
if you want to get a refill, it's up to you.
Yeah.
Really? No.
Yeah, Avengers Endgame, there was no intermissions at all. It's I gotta hold it. I can't. I gotta sit here for 2.5 hours.
When I saw Endgame and Infinity War, I saw Infinity War in China. Even in China, there was no intermission for Infinity War.
Really?
We had to sit through the whole thing, yeah.
We've always had intermissions. I think the only times we didn't have intermissions was during when COVID was rampaging in Iceland. Then it was nope, you got to stay through the whole movie. We're we're fine with that, but all right.
I'm trying to think of the last movie I saw that had an intermission.
Oh, maybe Godfather 3? I don't know.
Titanic did. I didn't see Titanic in theaters, but I know Titanic did.
All I remember is it came out on 2 VHS tapes. I was like, this is unheard of.
Yeah, and the second VHS tape is the one when the boat sank, because that's the one I always watch.
Well, we did have an intermission, and it was half an hour had passed, and we had 30 minutes left, and so they had to really amp up the action in that. But I mean, I really liked them. They could have gone a little bit further with the characterization. I felt like Cletus Cassidy could have been characterized a little bit better. Yeah. They were supposed to make him seem like this, serial killer, but I did not get serial killer out of him. I was like, no, he looked like a doofus, like a red-haired doofus who just stumbled into killing. That's it. But what I really liked, they have an end credit scene.
Yes, I've heard about that one.
And
me too.
It was amazing. And I'm super excited for December.
Yeah, I was already excited for December. regardless of that end credit. I haven't seen the Venom movies yet, but I'm not entirely sure how comfortable I am with them kind of shoehorning their way into things. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see. I'm excited. I'm excited to see how they're going to do it. And what did I do also? I'm started on a new book called The Witch's Heart. It's not horror. I decided to step a little bit away from horror. It's kind of like a Norse mythology retelling about Angrboda, who was the witch who birthed Loki's 3 horrific children. So it's basically told from her point of view how she, ended up raising these 3 children until Odin took them away from her. And Loki's there, and it's funny to see how everything, how he's treated in that book. And it's just a comfort read for me because I know all the Norse mythology, and just getting these kind of like, oh, look, this story happened to me. Do you remember when I birthed an 8-legged horse? That was funny. So it's basically just, going through that, and I'm like, this is nice. It's not my typical read, but my friend, she wrote it, and she's been getting a lot of success overseas, and I'm just really happy for her that it's going so well. And I'm reading that, and I'm also listening to John Paget's Secrets of Ventriloquism.
Ooh,
yes,
that's a good one.
I know. I think I have about an hour and a half left, and I'm just itching to finish it. But at the same time, I kind of don't, because it's terrifying.
What's been your favorite story so far?
Origami Dreams.
Oh, that's a good one.
That one was like, I was taking a walk while I was listening to it, and at the same time I was like, oh, I'm so glad I live in this neighborhood and I recognize everything here. Would not want to be Jack.
I love the one that's the play.
Wait, is it the last one?
I think it's the one that's right after 20 Simple Steps.
No, right after 20 Simple Steps. I'm actually on that now. That's about the police detective.
Oh, that's a good one too.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's a great book.
It definitely is. I highly recommend that everyone should read John Paget's work and just listen to him read.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
He has amazing narrating voice. I'm jelly. Like, I'm super jealous. Like, he can really invoke all the emotions with his voice, and it's like, damn, dude, this is horrifying. And one last thing before I leave it to Mike, I've decided, because I had nothing better to do than lie at home and wallow in my pain after getting my wisdom tooth pulled, I decided to watch Hostel.
I love Hostel.
I had not seen Hostel because everyone had told me that it was really brutal and just this huge ass torture porn movie. And I decided, like, okay, fuck it, I'll watch it right now. I'm a seasoned horror writer now. I can probably deal with it. And I watched it. The one that annoyed me the most is that they used snipur, which is the Icelandic for clitoris. Every time they saw a woman, they're like, oh, there's a snipur. And I'm like, I hate you guys. I hope you die a really painful death. And funny, and I also found it interesting that there was an actual Icelander playing in that movie, who played the Icelander. But I'm disappointed. I did not find the torture scenes that disgusting or that horrifying.
It's one of those movies for its time.
I think so, yeah. It's because I'm watching it now, and I'm like, no. And probably when it was released, it was probably horrifying to watch at the time. But now it hasn't aged that well.
I think another part of the problem with Hostel is that it was marketed purely as like a quote unquote torture porn movie, but it's more like the concept that is scary. The like the lengths of cruelty that, I don't know, people will go to, and it's also kind of a critique of capitalism, that you can actually buy this opportunity to torture someone.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's conceptually more terrifying because it's yeah. I think it was like billed as this like splattery, gruesome movie, and it's not. I mean, it's really not. It's maybe like 2 scenes, right? Like it's not.
Not even. It's not
the
even
ice
that.
scene still sticks out to me.
Yeah. Oh, me too. That fucks me up.
I actually laughed at that scene. But okay. I thought it was like, okay, this reminds me of Evil Dead. Bad.
I mean, that's probably deliberate on Roth's part too, because he loves that kind of shit. Like he's a horror geek.
I haven't seen that movie since I was in high school, so
it's on Netflix. So if you're in a mood, but like compared to I'm not saying that like that. Well, I have actually kind of said that I'm the queen of torture here, but if you compare that story like that movie to my story, I'm like, you're gonna be squeamish at my story. Like you're not gonna like the parts that I'm gonna use. I just watched like a pimple popper thing on TikTok. Like there was this one woman who was like suffering from this kind of like she's had like pimples. Like we were talking about huge bumps on her face. And they had to have like it surgically removed. And that thing, I recoiled from fear. That was more disgusting and horrifying than Hostel.
I mean, I can think of movies that are more disturbing than Hostel too. Like,
yeah,
I think for its time, because I started in high school. Like I was 17 when Hostel came out. I was 17 when Hostel came out. So like I was in high school. And for like a 17-year-old kid, that movie was kind of a lot to take in. But that being said, like since then I've seen Martyrs and like not much really tops Martyrs, to be honest with you. So it's really just like for its time. It's one of those things like you have to think of like for its time. Like one of my favorite horror movies is the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And like, has anyone here actually seen the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Oh, of course, like 20 times.
There's no blood in that movie at all, but like you walk away.
Did you know that there's an Icelander playing who plays the Leatherface?
Gunnar Hansen.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's no blood in that movie. Like besides, like there's no like on-screen characters getting like decapitated or gory and stuff. But because the movie just feels so intense and it feels so dirty, it makes it seem like it's a lot worse than it actually is.
It's also it feeds on your dread. I think that's also why it helped so much being more terrifying.
Whereas like Hostel, it's put together in like a nice, pristine, professionally filmed type thing, and for someone who hasn't seen like a lot of horror movies and they go and see Hostel, it's kind of a lot for them.
Yeah.
But for like most people, it's not. Or what was it? I think it was the Cannes Film Festival where they showed, I think it was either The Girl Next Door or The Woman, and this guy had like a mental breakdown at like the movie, and it was like put on YouTube and stuff.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was just like this guy was like, "You're showing us filth. This movie shouldn't be in this festival. It's so messed up." And like it's really good advertisement for the movie, honestly.
Definitely, yes.
But some people just don't really go out and watch this stuff, so when they see some parts that might be the more of extreme ends of the horror genre, it seems extra extreme to them. Whereas to people who have been involved in it for a while, we're like, it's okay.
Yeah. This actually happened when I took my coworker and I went to see Antebellum, and she had this idea that it was just going to be like a regular old like a slasher scary movie. But then, when she was finished watching Antebellum, she's like, "What did you? Why?" She was so shook, and I was like, "You didn't know it was about this? About racism and colonialism and about all this shit?" She's like, "No." And she was just like really traumatized by it.
It happens.
It does.
But
yes.
we've been kind of we went off the rails a little bit with this last convo.
True.
But Mike, what about you? Anything you've been watching or reading this last week?
I recently finished Kathy Koja's novel, The Blue Mirror, which was a first-time read. Yeah, phenomenal.
I love her work.
Yeah, she's my favorite living writer, and that book, like all the others, blew my mind. And I actually just this morning finished reading a novel that I'm reading for a course called The Art of Failure, and that was Samuel Beckett's The Unnamable, which is basically a book-length monologue from the point of view of a protagonist who seems to be locked in some indeterminate space where time doesn't exist. It's basically, I think the first 10-ish pages are a sort of preamble, and then the rest of the book is one long paragraph of this madness, basically, of being a consciousness locked in space. And it's maddening to read and kind of terrifying, and I sort of loved it. I'm looking forward to seeing how my classmates feel about it. So, yeah, those are my big recent reads, I guess.
Beckett was actually a huge influence on me when I was like in my 20s.
Cool.
I had to read Endgame for one of my college classes, and like that play fucked me up real good mentally. I love this stuff.
Yeah, there is something really distressing about it. Hey, there's he has a really good sense of capturing like futility and I guess failure through language. Like The Unnamable, in a way, was like an expression of how language inevitably fails when it attempts to describe the indescribable or the unnamable, the impossibility of that. And that's part of what's so anxiety inducing about that book. You're like circling around something, but you can never actually get at it. And that's very much my shit. So I really like that.
Well, I'm glad you dug it. So Havok is the first story in Mike Thorne's newest collection, Peel Back and See. So why don't you tell us a little bit about this collection, Mike, before we get into Havok?
So Peel Back and See was written almost entirely between 2018 and 2021, which, as it happens, were the most personally transformative years of my life, in many negative ways, in some positive, but some really significant ruptures in my life that kind of shook up my worldview in some ways. So I think Peel Back and See, by and large, sees me trying to navigate through a lot of intense pain, through some of the worst bouts of depression that I've ever gone through. I've struggled with chronic depression for over half my life, and a lot of these stories were a kind of paradoxical attempt to write through the condition that made me not want to write. So I guess that's how I would describe Peel Back and See. I keep describing it as my most personal and my darkest book to date, and I think that's how I would describe it as a whole, as a collection. I think there are some moments of levity. There's a story in there called The Furnace Room Mutant that was just my attempt to have a little bit of fun. But yeah, by and large, it's a pretty somber book, I guess.
Oh, definitely starts off right with Havok in that sense.
Yeah. I know. When I started reading this story, I was like, okay, this guy knows depression. Like, I was reading, like, just that opening page. It's like, wow, this is very, very familiar. And then I was wondering just how deeply you suffered from depression, and you answered that already. But yeah, it's like it's very clear from the beginnings that you've got your demons, and this is definitely bleeding onto the page.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it was uncomfortably familiar. So yeah.
Yeah.
When I got to the page where it was like, oh, he's taking acetylopram, I'm like, oh, hey, I take that. Oh, yeah, okay, so Mike knows what he's writing about. That's on one hand, that's definitely good, and on the other hand, it's like, well, I am very sorry that you deal with this.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's I don't know. Yeah, it's an ongoing thing to grapple with, try and finding different strategies, different ways of living with it. And again, there were just a series of events that occurred in the past few years that made my pre-existing conditions of depression and anxiety that much worse. And I when I talk about this book, I'm really cautious. I don't want to sound like I'm like a fucking victim or something. Like, I know I speak from a position of extreme privilege, and everybody collectively I mean, I think people's experiences of the pandemic have differed widely, and it's been a lot harder on some people than others. And I've been fortunate in the sense that, like, I have shelter, and, you know, for the things like that. So I don't want to, like, make myself out to be a victim, but it just, the facts are that I have these conditions, and I did have some pretty, you know, personally traumatizing events that I think just inevitably impacted my writing. I was like, if I'm going to write, I have to write through this, which is a risk, because I think when you're in the actual space where you were inhabiting those emotions, sometimes it's hard to think clearly. So I had to try and find a way to look objectively at the work while also, like, feeling my way through. And we'll see how readers feel about that in general, but that's what the book is, you know?
Well, that's great. I hope it brought you some measure of peace getting through this. I know when our lead character, Ray, in Havok, was talking about going into talk therapy, not to, I think, if I remember right, not to try and fix his depression, but to, like, understand it and build some measure of, I guess, kind of like a battle plan to tackle it. And that's where I very much related to him. I entered into therapy this year in January after some very dark months and a lot of shit happening over the last few years that kind of built and escalated, and then the pandemic hit, and it was like, okay, I hit a point where it was like, I really need help. I need somebody to talk to, and I could very much relate to Ray, and I think you did a beautiful job going through what it's like to suffer from depression. And yeah, I agree, we're not victims. It's very much it's a health issue. It's a mental health problem. It's a chemical issue with brains. It isn't always because of victimization. It is just because of, well, it's just the way life dealt it, you know? But yeah, having him talk about, like, the pandemic, bringing back bad memories almost every day, and trying to figure out a way that he can cope. And I know there's a lot of us out there that are just trying to figure out a way to make life bearable one day to the next. And yeah, it's very, very fucking relatable.
Yeah, especially when it was, I liked the way that you chose doom scrolling. That felt really relatable.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I'm really happy to hear, Mike, that you sought out help too, because I know, and I think depending on someone's disposition, that can not be an easy thing to do. So I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. It's not easy. It's ended up being easier than I had thought, and I have done therapy before, so it's kind of like versed in what I needed and what I wanted to get out of it. But yeah, and that first round I know was very much not easy, because I am typically fairly introverted and closed off, and I was always kind of raised in that fashion where you don't talk about things, you don't tell anybody anything, you don't talk about your feelings. Anytime the people that I was around at that time, if anything came up with depression, the solution was always just get over it.
Yeah.
Just get over it, because it's so fucking easy to do that. And I think we see in Ray that it is not that easy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm glad Villamé brought up the doom scrolling thing too. I think that's again, a big part of what this book is doing, and a big part of what sets it apart from Darkest Hours, is that it's very entrenched in the contemporary frameworks that within which I was writing. I think, like, Darkest Hours has its contemporary stories, and it's also personal. All of my books are personal, but I think Darkest Hours, like, in a way, shielded me from some of the darker stuff, in the sense that the stories were soaked in genre homage and references, and in heavy metal homage and references. So, like, the pain is in there, but it's sort of more
it's
abstracted.
masked.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas, you know, in Peel Back and See, I tried to just get, like, you know, I guess peel some of that back and get closer to the demons in a way. It just seemed like the only way I could continue writing. Like, Havok, among some of the other stories, like I said, was just me one of the consequences of depression is just losing interest in everything, losing motivation, losing a sense of purpose, of desire at all, and just thinking, can I still will myself to create something? So that's what I was doing, and Havok was written obviously quite close to publication. This story is set in the pandemic, and the bookends of the collection are both that way. There's a closing story called Fade to White that kind of serves as a companion to Havok, I guess you would say. So I tried to couch the book within this contemporary moment as much as I could without writing just like COVID-19 fiction. So in yeah, you know what I mean? Like Havok is set in this moment, but I didn't want to have like the really on the nose references to people wearing masks or like dumb shit Donald Trump might have said. I didn't want it to be too oafish in that way. But I also was like, well, I am doing virtual therapy. I am experiencing these really odd things that are so particular and that might be worthwhile to explore in the fictional medium. So that's sort of what I did.
In fact, I don't know if it's an episode that is out already or if it's one that I'm in the middle of editing now, but we had recently talked about how we thought the pandemic would affect fiction and if we're going to be getting a lot more stories about the pandemic. And we all pretty much agree that inevitably we will be getting, but whether or not it kind of goes the route of like zombie fiction where it's just every 10th book is about the pandemic in some way.
Yeah.
I think what you did here was a very smart way of handling it. You addressed the real world concerns of it without dwelling in it.
Mm-hmm.
No, thank you.
It's a smart mention of it. It recognizes the time and place of where the story is set, but it definitely doesn't go into
It's not the center of the theme.
Yes. Thank you for summarizing it much more than I am apparently capable of this morning.
It's what I do.
Yeah, because if it was at the center of the story, it's like, I don't know, like, what am I going to say about the pandemic that hasn't already been expressed a million different ways by everyone in the tumult of social media and news and just conversations with friends and family? I just don't know that I could offer anything novel. So what I can do is just try to write something authentic and real. And what is authentic and real right now is also situated in this context. So I couldn't ignore it.
Yeah, I think just by saying, it's set in the pandemic, he's seeing a virtual therapist, and it's like, okay, well, we already know what's going on in this world. We're already so intimately familiar with what life in the pandemic and being in quarantine and doing virtual therapy. 2 out of the 3, I would say, is very much a commonplace with the majority of readers, that we know what this is. We know what it's like. We know what he's feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
On top of that, too, that also touches in with the pandemic, is since we've been stuck inside, is finding more ways of entertaining ourselves. And that's how streaming has become a lot more popular during this time, which, again, ties into an aspect of the story with the live stream that's going on. And Phil may mention the doom scrolling, but doom scrolling also plays a big hand of it and being stuck inside and connected all the time. But I feel like all of those, the live stream, the doom scrolling, all it makes the story feel very relevant to like what we're going through.
It just always correlates with these kind of big events happening around the world. I remember when I was reading Haruki Murakami's After the Quake. I don't know if you read that, but it happened after the big Kanto earthquake in Japan. And one of the stories actually is about a woman who is glued to the television, just watching all the horrible news, and that's just how she lives her life afterwards. She didn't really experience the earthquake, but she's just, living through, basically doom scrolling through the news.
Yeah, I think it's inarguable at this point that the pandemic has not had a beneficial impact on mental health, and being online more is not useful for mental health. It's all been very damaging in very numerous, very different ways, whether we want to admit it to ourselves or not.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think I'm always skeptical of positivist narratives that emerge, especially when they emerge from like the context of capitalism. And I think often we hear these kind of hollow statements about how social media brings people together, or that it's has positive potential. And as a pessimist and as a horror writer, I'm like, let's actually tease that out a little bit and see what the truth is. And I think the truth is a lot darker than that.
I completely agree.
Yeah. For as much as it brings us apart, it also certainly does a hell of a good job of driving us away from one another too, where it's like, oh my God, this guy's tweeting that. Like, unfriend. I don't want to be associated with this guy anymore.
Yeah.
I have certainly been guilty of that on numerous occasions, where it's kind of like you get to see the best and most definitely the worst aspects of people, where we're allowing ourselves to be more unfiltered online than we are perhaps in day-to-day conversations.
Definitely. I mean, this pandemic has definitely showed us who are the most assholes here.
Yeah, well,
they are getting like more views.
Shows that too. Like, going back to 2016, having relatives go on, I was like, oh my God, look at him beat up this. They beat up these Mexicans and blacks. Isn't this great? It's like, how the fuck are you my aunt? How are you my uncle? Why are you my father? Fuck all of you people. This is gross.
Yep.
So that, for me, is very much the negative side of social media, and I see that as being more prevalent than any positive impacts.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I guess in terms of the things that scare me, I often think two of the things that frighten me most and that I see as the biggest threats, not only to progressive politics, but maybe to the human race, are the state of ecological catastrophe that we find ourselves in, with like the climate emergency, among all the other incumbent issues, and honestly, social media. I can't overstate how dangerous I think this technology is and how out of our control it is. And I think we live in the world we create, and I'm not so sure I like what I see in terms of the world we create.
I can give you an example of what is happening, for example, in regards to social media. There's this trend going on TikTok where the students are, stealing a lot of things from the classroom.
Oh, yeah.
Like these they were supposed to be innocent things, but then they end up stealing a lot more than they were supposed to.
Yeah.
And now there's this trend going on that started, I think, somewhere else, maybe in America. I can't remember, but it
would have to be America.
Yeah, and it's gaining track here in Iceland, where teenagers are. I would say it's like the skit where you ring doorbells and run away.
Oh, Ding Dong Ditch.
Ding Dong Ditch, yeah. But instead of doing that, they are just kicking down the doors.
Oh God!
In the middle of the night.
Well, it's a good way to get yourself shot.
Yeah, especially in America.
In America, yes, but here in Iceland, where there are no guns, basically, this is terrifying for us.
Yeah, well, I know the teacher one escalated from destroying school property to smack a teacher day.
Oof.
And it's like, I definitely see that correlation where we can see how the worse online behavior gets, the worse in-person behavior gets. Like online, having that kind of anonymity to be a completely selfish asshole behind an avatar.
I mean, look at how.
Well, I was going to say, look at how that played out in the pandemic. Now you've got people who want to mock others for wearing masks in the middle of a deadly pandemic, and they will start coughing on you and calling you names. And they don't have anonymity anymore. They're being recorded for the internet. And this is what they want. This is what they're reveling in. They have learned over the number of years, and no doubt because of the Trump presidency, that we will reward your vile and disgusting behavior. We will make you famous. And this is what they want. This is the end game for them. It's like,
you won't suffer any consequences.
Yeah, you might get fired from your job, but hey, look at all these viral clicks you got.
Yep.
And all you had to do was mock somebody who maybe has immunosuppression issues and has to wear a mask so they don't fucking die but you got to laugh at them in a grocery store and became internet famous for 10 minutes. And now no one remembers your name, but you have that moment in your memory where it's like, for a minute there, I was pretty famous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like the story Havok, again, it's not like explicitly about social media either, but it is about this idea of becoming subsumed in screens and lost in screens. And in a way, like this kind of dissolution of what it means to be a self in the world when you are just kind of cocooned in your depression, in your thought cycles, like locked inside your subjectivity in a way.
I would definitely describe that as extreme escapism.
Interesting. Like the Havok live feed?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I can see that, actually. I think that's that's part of what's going on. This search for maybe an escape hatch, a desperate search for that.
And that's quite the find, is to end up finding that live feed, which the first time I read Havok and I read the live feed, I was like, this is fucked.
Well, good. Thank you.
Just trying to picture it in my head. I was just like, what?
I imagine Havok as the disembodied head in the thing.
I love that.
You just add a couple of, tarantula heads on it with the eyes. It's basically what my depraved mind came up with.
Well, I mean, I love John Carpenter, so I'll take that. But the truth is that the creature or the entity in the story is taken very explicitly from an entity that appeared in a sleep paralysis episode that I had. Like, this story, again, is just so directly, in many ways. I mean, Ray is not me. There are many things about Ray that are nothing like me. But the appearance of the entity in the real world was lifted directly from a sleep paralysis episode I had. So I just tried my best to describe this black, inky kind of insectile thing that was pressing against the inside of my overhead light fixture. And I could see the light fixture sagging from the pressure, and the thing fell at the foot of my bed. I could feel the weight of it, and the light fixture clattered on the floor. And the thing crawled up my leg, and I just I did my best to yeah. So this is all real. I mean, that's real. That's not So that's
giving me the shivers here, Mike.
Yeah.
Well, that's my job, right? That's my job.
Did Havok visit you a lot more often during your sleep paralysis episodes?
Thankfully not. That was the first and only episode I had of that nature. I was having extraordinarily vivid dreams when I started taking a new medication, but they were never in my actual space. Like, this sleep paralysis episode kind of clung to me for a while. I was like, was that a dream? It just didn't, because I kind of pulled myself out of it, and then the thing wasn't there. I was pulling at my sheets and couldn't see it anywhere. The light fixture was still attached, so obviously it was a dream, but it was so persuasive and so terrifying that as a horror writer, a few days later, I thought, maybe I should do something with that. So voila, Havok.
Well, the way Havok plays out on the page, you describe it brilliantly.
Yeah.
If I can read really briefly here, you write it as, its necklace body like a slimy black watermelon, lined with rows of limbs resembling jointed tentacles, its face all squirming mandibles and far too many milky gray eyes.
You see where I'm going with the thing,
Yeah.
Yeah, Lovecraft, too, for sure, is always an influence. I love the way Lovecraft selectively piles on the adjectives when he chooses to deploy these really Baroque sentences. So I guess that's my attempt to pay tribute to Lovecraft, maybe.
Well, it's a brilliant description, which I think was often lost in Lovecraft, where it was indescribable.
Well, thank you.
I also really liked how you addressed the trauma.
Oh, thank you.
It was horrifying. I mean, when I was reading it, I could imagine Mike just sitting there, we're doing a childhood trauma again. Way. Because the last time we talked about this kind of childhood trauma, we were empty inside afterwards.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was for Sean Thompson's Astrum.
Yes.
Which had a similar effect. Thankfully, not something that I have directly had. My heart goes out to anybody who did have to deal with this kind of trauma.
Yeah. And you really did. You really did it. You did it well, but at the same time, you started off subtly and then you went balls deep into it. Pun intended, I guess.
I don't know if that's how we want to describe it. Like, that's a little.
I mean, blame it on my painkillers.
Let's just go with it.
Yeah, that's a hell of a phrase.
But no, I think what Villamay is trying to say is like, it started off very subtle until it wasn't subtle anymore.
Yes.
And it was a build up for the subtlety to go away. That's what gave it like a big impact.
Yeah, it's a very natural progression of awfulness. We start out like it's subtly terrible, and we get this introduction to. Well, I mean, we're already doing spoilers, so fuck it. Mm-hmm. Ray was sexually assaulted by a teacher, Mr. Jacobson, and we get this idea of who and what Mr. Jacobson is with this subtle introduction where he is smiling at Ray beneath a sparse mustache, and he smooths his tie and slips his glasses up his nose and then tells Ray, "You're a nasty little fucker, aren't you?" Mm-hmm. And goes deeper into depravity from there as to Ray not being the nasty little fucker, but Mr. Jacobson most certainly is. And we get I wouldn't say fairly graphic, but it definitely tells you what you, and maybe more than you want to know, as it escalates from there into sexual assault against a child.
Yeah.
And I love how you phrase that at the end there, where trauma does not accept invitations or obey orders. It just shows up loud and vulgar and unannounced, has its way, and then retreats back into the shadows. But it never goes away. Yeah. Never really.
Thank you.
And that is definitely a sentiment that I think even if you haven't had that kind of trauma, that idea, there's something that you can at least relate to and it stays with you. That's a fucking punch in the gut by the time you get to the end of this sequence.
Well, thank you. I'm really glad to hear that aspect of the story worked for you all. And I guess I haven't really talked about it in interviews yet. But again, I just there were certain things I guess I wanted to get closer to the bone, more vulnerable in my writing, and just try to be authentic and real, not put myself in the way of the story and the characters. And this is, in fact, how this sort of predatory behavior tends to progress. It usually does begin with a sort of grooming behavior, a kind of ingratiating of oneself to the person who's being preyed upon, to the victim. And it escalates and escalates until, because the person, presumably the predatory person, is following some kind of compulsion, and they, like any compulsion, it intensifies. So yeah, it's heavy shit, and I didn't take it lightly, and it's painful for me to go there in my writing, but I just I don't know. Like I said, I didn't want to get in the way of my fiction. I didn't want to think, well, what if it's, what will people think? Will this be too disturbing or whatever? It's just like I knew I couldn't do that, or I wouldn't write this year or these past few years. I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to go to the dark places. And so I did.
That authenticity comes through, I think, throughout this entire piece. Unfortunately, I have not read the rest of this collection, but I am certainly of a mind to, and I'm looking forward to the rest of it. That authenticity, you definitely nailed it. That definitely comes through on the page. And if you had to go through anything like this in real life, my heart goes out to you, man. I am very, very sorry.
Thank you.
I have a question though regarding the end of the story. Mm-hmm. When he is in this new world, right? Mm-hmm. And you see, then you move over and you see where the laptop is, and suddenly you see Howard's face saying, "Set your eyes on this shit." So basically, is kind of feels like you're in like he's in both places at the same time. Like he's in this real world and he's sitting beside Ray watching the feed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, was it like? Did you tend to have it like that, or is it just something that we're just supposed to let our minds travel?
Yeah, I think for better or worse, one of my tendencies or instincts as a writer is to ambiguate as much as I can. But certainly, the end of the story is a kind of dissolution and a kind of confrontation with underlying conditions of this universe, or maybe some other universe that are by no means benevolent. And Ray does become kind of absorbed in that and can kind of still see in the distance where he came from, but that's disappearing fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it could work on a metaphorical register, I suppose, or it can be literalized. I think either reading works fine. And I suppose the ending is a little ambiguous, maybe. Or maybe not. I don't know how everybody reads it, but
I feel it's meant to be kind of open-ended. Like, the way I saw it is like, I know we were talking about this over like DMs last month, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
But the way I kind of saw it was by the end, once like Ray gets bit by Havok or
Mm-hmm.
stung by Havok, however it goes, he has all these like visions and he sees these things, and after reading like his own previous experience with the trauma, his depression and suicidal ideation that he has, and then getting introduced to this thing that stings/bites him, introduces itself to him, and he just kind of opens his mind to all the awfulness that's happened throughout human history.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of saw it as like this thing kind of is not so much an evil thing, but it's like all of our evil actions, or everything evil that mankind has done throughout history, has gathered to create this entity. And this entity just exists. And those who come into contact with it learn the truth of what's caused its existence. But I don't think the entity itself is malevolent in like its own way. It's more just it's existing from the actions that mankind has done throughout history.
I really like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, see, I had wondered how much of it was kind of a grooming in its own right with Havok.
That's interesting.
I mean, Havok does draw people to its feed, and people are like, the fuck is this thing?
And the way it slowly appears and then begins to escalate and takes a more forceful approach when it bites or stings Ray and then lures it over to the other side.
That's really interesting. I don't even know if I had considered that, but I think like a lot of this, well, particularly this story and many of the stories in Peel Back and See are sort of centered on evil seductions in a way, or malevolent seductions, whether that be addictive substances or social media, or even depression kind of has an evil seductive quality to it. You know, just go back to sleep, just come back to bed, just shut it up.
Just lie in bed. You don't need to do anything.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I think have you guys watched? I am asking Mike now. Have you watched Big Mouth?
I don't think so. No.
I think like Big Mouth has like the best representation of depression. It's like a depression kitty.
Oh yeah, the depression kitty is a really good part of Big Mouth.
Yeah. It's like a huge purple kitty cat who just lies out and purrs next to you. It's like, it's okay, just come to bed. You can just lie here. Don't you think it's really good? And it's like this alluring creature.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, and I guess that sort of aligns with what Mike was talking about. This, I guess you could describe a lot of these things as something like grooming, just kind of sedating you, pulling you in, getting you to put your guard down. And I think maybe again that's part of what this story is dealing with, is the horror of having experienced numerous moments in one's life where one lets one's guard down and gets hurt very badly. And like, how does one continue to move through the world having experienced that?
I really like the way this is kind of ended too. Like after Ray gets kind of bit, stung, loses consciousness, and has his mind open, and it's kind of this like moment where, like, despite the traumas that he's like been through and that he's trying to fix and recover from, this is like the end all moment that is forever changing him. There's no reverse from this moment. Like, this moment is final for Ray.
Yes. Yeah, it's a very pessimistic story. And I tend to write very pessimistic fiction. So again, we'll see. Actually, it's interesting. I just saw there's an amazing YouTube channel, Plagued by Visions. The host Juan said he describes this book as a work of pessimistic horror expressly. So I guess that's my jam.
It has a nice ring to it.
It does.
Yeah, it does. We should have him read some John Paget and Tom Ligotti and see how that goes.
Yes.
I mean, Ligotti is a massive influence, and I have a lot of respect for Paget. I haven't yet read his fiction, but he's doing great things with Vastarian and everything.
Yes, he is. One thing that I was curious about, because we were reading this from an arc, so it might have been a typo, or maybe I'm reading too much into it, where Havok pulls Ray through, and it says in there he saw a laptop in the spot where we'd landed, which is a very sudden shift in tense. Instead of they, where they had landed, there's this sense of breaking the fourth wall, and it's becoming where we had landed, as if we're there with them.
You know what? I think that is a typo.
Okay.
So,
see, you could have gone in like, this is like a really meta story after all. We're all there with Ray.
I know, but I guess what I'm doing in this episode.
Wrong answer.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to be real, man. I'm trying to be real. Yeah, that's a typo. I opened the book. I was like, oh fuck. You know what? These things slip through the cracks, I guess, no matter how many times you go over the manuscript and over the manuscript.
Oh, yes.
So,
I know.
We feel you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I just thought it was a really interesting sudden shift in tenses where.
That's what it is. That's what it is.
What it is. Okay.
It's an interesting and totally intentional shift in tense, and I will report back with an essay on my reasoning.
Pulled in with Ray. We are all with Havok.
Hey, that works. Let's say it's a
we are Havok as readers and podcast.
We are Legion.
Yes.
Yes.
This is all part of our doom scrolling. We're there. We are making havoc.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, then fuck me. I'm sorry I pointed that out.
No worries. I mean,
happens to the best of us.
Yeah, that happens. So what can you do?
My debut story has a typo on the first page. So
yeah, it's weird. No matter how many people go over it, because you have like your managing editor, the editor, the author. Usually, all of you are going through it, several times. But these little fuckers still rear their heads. So.
Oh yeah, it's fun to just completely read right over them, or you mentally insert a word that isn't on the page and think, okay, this proof is finally ready. And then it gets to a reviewer who's like, there's 10 words that are missing in here. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah. The glamorous aspects of being a writer. Yeah.
How much did I pay them again? Why?
Oh, that's funny.
It's funny because it's true.
That's right. Yeah.
That's why we are allowed to cry and they don't.
Even Stephen King has typos.
There we go. I'm in good company.
Like, what was that one King book that they used the OCR to like update the edit?
Oh, yeah, the long walk.
A character gets like hugged by his mother's ass or something.
Yeah, the original sentence was she had wrapped her arms around him, but the optical character recognition couldn't differentiate the R and the M, and so she wrapped her anus around him.
Wow. Oh, man. That's egregious. That's egregious.
Talk about a full body hug.
Talk about full body horror.
Wow, I feel a lot better about my typo now. That's good. Yeah. That's good. That's good. Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah, the typos get pretty bad, so
yeah.
Out of the ones that could happen, this is a pretty easy one to like not even notice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or go completely overboard with like, what does he mean?
Or obsess over loosely
so much
trying
more.
to find out the meaning of this tense change.
Yeah. See, you have to read this story multiple times to really appreciate all the finer points of it.
That's right. That's right.
Hidden messages. There's going to be entire cults that are springing forth from this work.
I certainly hope so. That's the goal. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm I'm developing a screen version of this. The filmmaker Jamie Blanks is interested in maybe doing something with Havok, and there is a sort of culty element involved in the earliest draft I was working on. I don't know if I'm going to stick with that, but again, it's quite a short story, and it's a very interior story, so I'm sort of building on the central mythology and imagery, and there is, like I said, a kind of cult-like element in that screen treatment draft that I last submitted. So we'll see where it goes. But
cool.
Does it like go fully from where after he reads the blog?
It's kind of, I don't know how much I want to say because I don't know how much it's going to change. But the character of Ray is quite a bit different in the version I last submitted, but I don't know where it'll end up. So I unfortunately I can't say a lot about it right now because it is all kind of in flux. It's too early, I guess, for me to reveal anything. I'm not trying to withhold. It's just like I don't know yet. Yeah. I thought I knew where I was going with it, and there was an additional character who I don't know if is going to stay. You know how the writing process is. It's just like, it's too early to say. But we are interested in doing like a screen treatment of this story. So
awesome.
It's going to look so awesome.
Fingers crossed that I make my way out of it alive.
Time will tell.
I'm very curious to see how the cult element plays into it, especially as I realize now that my whole question about the we, you just turned me into a fucking Redditor character going on about all the meanings. Havok and Havok, and it's all these things, Cosmos in German. I'm like, what is this we?
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. Yeah, that was fun to play with like subreddits and YouTube and podcasts and think like, if something like this were to emerge on the internet, how would people handle it, and how would people talk about it? And there's the long blog post in the story where you're basically reading this transcription of madness.
Oh God, that was fucking creepy too.
Oh, thank you. Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that because I again, an earlier draft of the story, I think I wrote it, that particular blog post a little too cleanly. And one of my trusted first readers was like, this isn't quite working for me. So I really worked away at that blog post to try and I was like, how can I put madness on the written page, tell madness without telling madness? And that was tricky. So I'm glad to hear it worked for you.
Oh, it did. Yeah.
The madness came through.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Good. That's good to hear.
We're talking about the fact that when I was reading the blog post and I saw that like some of them were like some of the words had capital letters, and I was like, ooh, does it have a puzzle? And I started looking at the puzzle. I found nothing, of course, but yeah.
I had looked at, you had mentioned Lovecraft being an influence, and I think it really comes through well in that blog post particularly. It reminded me, we have talked about Lovecraft a few times on past episodes. There was, and of course the name is going to escape me now, but one where a character is in a sanitarium and he's talking to his therapist, and it's just all crazy gibberish where it kind of comes through like, you know, that this guy is telling the truth, but he's also completely whacked out from it. Mm-hmm. And that is what that blog post reminded me of. It was a very insane confession.
Oh, thank you.
Overall, I think like the story just works in general, having this really pessimistic, creepy atmosphere.
Yeah.
That kind of starts at the beginning and it just keeps it going all throughout.
And it's a brilliant opener to this collection. It does exactly what that kind of opening story should do, which is make you want to read the rest of the collection. And I am very much there.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, like I said, it's I see as there's a kind of spine to the book is what I keep describing in interviews. There's Havok at the beginning, and then there's a story called Deprimer that's middle-ish, I guess, closer to the end, maybe 60% of the way through. And that's a story expressly about depression as well. It was originally published in Vastarian. It owes a lot to people like Thomas Ligotti. And the collection closes with a story called Fade to White, which was the one I wrote most recently, which is, without giving too much away, I guess the centerpiece of the story are these two exchanges that the protagonist has with two different cam girls. So again, it's very much a story locked into screens and into these kind of ambiguous interactions that maybe they have a certain embodied experience in reality, and there's something else when viewed through the prism of the internet. So those three stories to me are kind of like the spine of Peel Back and See. It goes on some weird genre divergences because I like having fun with that stuff. But to me, those are like the core of the book.
Awesome.
Well, so far, I hope this book does well for you. I know it's coming on the 29th.
Yeah, it comes out on the 29th. So again,
of October, we should clarify. It's already out by the time this releases.
That is true. So if you're listening to this, go out and buy it now.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we'll see. So far, the reviews have been merciful. Nobody has taken me to task too hard for anything, so that's nice. Yeah, we'll see. It is especially, like I said, all my books are personal, but I do feel like this is my most vulnerable and exposed book, so it's especially nerve-wracking to put it out in the world. But I'm glad I got this shit out of my system and on to the next book, I guess.
Well, what is next for you?
Well, I'm working on that screen treatment of Havok. I'm also slowly moving my way through a second novel, which is called Cloven Hoof. I'm nearing the end of the first draft, which is very messy and will need a lot of love. But it's kind of a haunted house attraction, high school novel that draws on the residue of the Satanic Panic and also invokes cosmic horror. In some ways, it's influenced by some of the Poverty Row, Bela Lugosi movies of the 40s. So it's kind of pulling from all over the place. It's very much a high school haunted house attraction novel at its core, set in the Halloween season. It's really soaking up the autumn atmosphere. So yeah, again, hopefully I see my way to the end of this thing, and then I'll be starting a new novel for my dissertation as part of the PhD. And I don't know what that looks like yet, but I'll find out soon. So
awesome.
I have to start Shelter of the Damned. I picked up that one, so I need to get started on that one ASAP.
Cool. Well, that's that's actually, in terms of chronology of the things I've written, that's the earliest thing I wrote. I wrote Shelter for the Damned originally in my early 20s, although it was reworked a lot since then. But I think in terms of like maybe seeing a logical progression of my writing, if there is any such thing, Shelter for the Damned is maybe like the foundation of where I came from. It's full of a kind of like entering into adulthood related fear and anxiety and anger. So yeah, I think it leads into Darkest Hours and Peel kind of intuitively maybe.
Well, Peel Back and See is available now from Journal Stone. If you buy direct from their website, if you purchase the paperback, you will get the ebook bundled with it, which is something Amazon does not do. So
it's something more publishers should do.
It's something I think that a hell of a lot more publishers should do. And it's one thing that I personally love about buying direct from Journal Stone is that reason specifically. And if you hear about a book early and get the ebook, you get it right away. You don't have to wait months.
Yep. But Mike, where can our listeners get in touch with you?
My website is mikethornwrites.com. I'm on Twitter at Mike Thorne Writes, same handle on Instagram. Sometimes I post stuff on there. I have a cute new cat lurking around my home named Pluto, so you get to see pictures of him if you follow me on the gram.
I've been doing that. It is so cute.
Yeah, he's a nice little. He's actually kind of a little monster, but I love him. Yeah, and I'm on Facebook, Goodreads, Letterboxd. I'm floating all over this scary thing we call the internet. So yeah, I'm around.
Speaking of Letterboxd, I have one question for you. I know you're a huge movie person. You love doing horror movie reviews and essay write-ups and stuff. Have you seen The Medium yet?
I have not. No. Recommended?
Highly recommended.
Noted. Okay. Cool.
It's a Thai. I talked about it last week on the podcast, but it's a Thai-Korean co-production movie that's kind of like a faux documentary.
Oh, dope. Oh, yeah. I think was the person who did Shudder involved in this?
He directed it.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. No, that's on my radar. Thanks for the reminder.
I think you'll like it a lot. It's fucking great.
Cool. I will make a point to seek that out. Is it streaming anywhere? Or is it?
It's a Shudder exclusive.
Okay. I don't have Shudder, but I'll figure something out.
Villamay, where can our listeners get in touch with you?
Well, I'm still on a social media break due to my burnout. But if
You've been
people
active
like
on TikTok,
yeah, I was going to say, but if people like my silly writer-related videos on TikTok, they can find me there on Villamay Mist. But they can also contact me if they want on my website, vitlamaymistauthor.com.
All right, and Mike, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter at MikeH5856 or head up my website at michaelpatrickhicks.com.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Rudy53088. Be sure to follow our podcast, Add Into Staring, and be sure to review and rate our podcast on all the platforms you listen on. Make sure we spread the abyss around all the algorithm. This is Richard Gerlach saying keep staring.